Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What you are about to see is the final product of our group's World War II podcast project. This is take number 1. Please proceed. That will be our official intro from now on. I have left my mark on the podcast.
Okay, anyways, this is the second episode of our Beaou podcast on World War II. My name is Palm. I'm the co-host, and this is Poom, the official host, and another co-host, Mr. Ink, and finally, probably the co-host or our guest, Mr. Dean.
Hello, I am not the co-host. I am just a humble guest. Okay, I need to get my list ready, but I don't want to move, so I don't want to ruin this beautiful cape. This is my blanket, by the way. This is the quality of NUS High boarding school blanket. It has this really nice pizza-sized collar for me. I feel like Yoda, but with a sense of fashion, you know.
Okay, I think we can start now.
Louis Vuitton, I prefer.
I think we can start where
No
we
sense of
left
fashion.
off last time.
Darth Vader has.
Okay, so in the first
Where's
episode,
my? I'm trying to find my list. I forgot where I put. Okay, here it is. All right. Okay, I found the list now. So, where did we stop last time?
we talk about like Pearl Harbor, and we finished the Soviet invasion. The German invasion of Soviet.
We did touch a little bit on Thailand and ASEAN involvement in non-ASEAN Southeast Asia involvement in World War II also.
But I think
Yeah.
that was really,
How
like,
about Japan?
more.
Yeah, on that part, I just researched it and I found out that
How far did we get for Japan?
we could continue on the Midway.
Okay, so it seems like we're already more than halfway through the war. So I suppose we're nearing the conclusion. So do you want to conclude in Europe or in the Asia Pacific first? Europe. Okay.
I think
Probably Europe.
more
So yes,
chronologically.
chronologically, it can be hard to do it chronologically. I don't want to do it chronologically because if it's chronologically,
I
then I have to
like-
switch back and
okay.
forth. It's very confusing.
I said like I think we should include in Europe first, like chronologically, because like it ended first in Europe. Oh, whatever. Let's just move on.
As in do Europe chronologically, of course, yeah, it's gonna be chronologically, and it's gonna be chronological anyways. But if you want to start with Europe, then I suppose we start with Europe. So the important player on the Allied side that helped bring the war in Europe to an end would definitely be the United States, who, as we all know, joined the war in 1941 after the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor. And so, in one of the most famous military operations of all time, the Allied forces landed in France. No. Okay, that makes it sound. They what's actually what's the word? They invaded France through the English Channel. They invaded at Normandy.
they invaded Nazi occupied.
So today this is known as the D-Day landings. Yeah, Nazi occupied France. Yeah. So since, if you guys remember correctly, the Nazis had taken over France by that point. So in order for them to reopen the Western Front, they had to attack somewhere, right? They had to land their troops somewhere on the coast of maybe France, or maybe like the Netherlands or Belgium, along like the western coastline for continental Europe, right? And they chose France, and they landed in Normandy. And so, yeah, the D-Day landings, also known as
Maybe we-
Operation Overlord, right?
Yeah, it was on, I guess, 6 June 1944.
Can't see anyone. Okay, I can see Palm. All right. Yeah, I think it's June 6th, I think.
And that day,
Yeah, 6th of June 1944.
and that day, there was a very
So
bad climate. That day, there was a bad climate. It was so bad that the Nazi
you mean
the,
bad
the
weather, right?
radar, yeah, the Nazi had caught the radar of the Allies attack before, but they didn't think that it's gonna be true because there was a very bad weather, as I said.
Dean, can you hear?
Okay.
Um,
I barely heard enough of that. I don't know if it's the lag. Might be the lag. Anyway, can you guys hear me? Like, am I lagging?
yes,
I'm using the
Yeah.
LAN.
Yes,
I
we
think
can hear
just
you.
say that again.
I'm using the LAN cable.
There was a very
You can
bad.
hear me. You can hear me clearly, right?
Yeah. Like
Yep.
a bit, but it's okay.
But your video is quite lacking.
Here we are.
Yeah, Palm, can you say that again?
So there was a very bad weather that day. It was so bad that the Nazi had the radar of the Allies attack before, but they thought that's not gonna be true.
I think you can move like the thingy here closer to your mouth.
You mean me?
Yes.
But I'm not using the microphone from this one.
Alright, okay.
I think
So
Dean just like the
Dean is lacking, so we can talk about D-Day more in detail, I guess.
All right, I am back. For some reason, I disconnected, even though my LAN cable was still perfectly functional. You guys hear me?
Yes.
You hear me? Oh yes, brilliant. Okay, now let's continue where we left off. And maybe I'll just for the sake of time, I will not bother Bam to repeat his point about the weather because I basically could not hear that at all. But
So do you hear me now, Dean?
Yeah. Alright, so we are back. We are having some technical difficulties and we are continuing on the D-Day. So Dean,
Yeah.
can you give us more information or either of you?
So as we mentioned, it was on 6th of June 1944 that there was a very bad weather. It was so bad that the Nazi who could the radar of the Allies attack people. They didn't realize that they would attack. They would really attack.
So which side had an advantage on this? Obviously, I think it is an allied side, right?
Yes, because on the Eastern Front, the Nazi was in war with the Soviet.
So like the allies got some sort of like superiority power or something.
bloody connection died again for no reason. Now I've been compelled to move to the pantry. I will live with a limited supply of 81% of battery left, which actually dies pretty quickly. So I suppose that's another incentive for me to speed up a little bit. Hello, guys.
okay. I'm not cutting that out,
It's
but
technical Beaou.
What happened?
So
I'm not cutting that
so
out.
we are alright.
I'm 11.
That's fine. We can continue.
Yes,
So-
please.
So we are talking. Me and Pam are talking about the Allies having the superior sea power over the Axis, I guess. So can you give us more insight about that?
Well, the British the British had for the longest time had the Europe's strongest navy. Like there's an old saying during the Napoleonic era, I think, going France, the master of the land, and then Britain, the mistress of the sea. I think it goes something like that. I think Mr. Jom, corporal Frenchman, will be cringing so hard right now because I probably got it wrong. Anyway, I'm not a corporal Frenchman, so excuse my falsely quoted proverb. Anyway, not falsely quoted, wrongly quoted. I am mixing up similar words. Anyway, yeah, but okay. So Britain had a very strong navy. Also, Germany had lost its had lost its air power. Air power a word? Because the Luftwaffe was really badly affected by the Battle of Britain. So by the time of like 1944, the German Air Force Luftwaffe didn't have as much strength as it had maybe perhaps like 5 years earlier. Yeah, and with the Americans and everything, yeah. Yeah, but no, but like the British Channel itself was very difficult to cross. They had to wait for the weather to be right until they could actually cross the British Channel and attack France and reopen the Western Front. Yeah, so
I think there are 5 beaches, and the US were responsible for 2 beaches, and then the 2 for France, and another one for the Canadian force.
yeah,
Yeah.
they landed on multiple beaches. Nowadays, the most famous or infamous one was Omaha Beach. Yeah, and D-Day was not a walk in the park for the Allies. Devastating casualties
I think they
on
lost
Omaha Beach. Yeah.
50% casualties in Omaha Beach, right? If I recall correctly.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I think they lost like around 50% casualties, but I'm not sure whether.
50%. You mean 50% of all the casualties were lost in Omaha?
No.
Lost
I
on
mean,
Omaha.
like 50% of the troops that landed.
Oh, you mean 50% of the people that died?
Yeah,
Or
I'm
were
not sure whether like
casualties?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Casualties doesn't mean like
Yeah. No. Yeah.
death,
Casualties.
no. Because
Casualties
it
basically
can
mean
count as injured person as well.
yeah.
I think like 10,000 like soldier like the Nazis, there were only like 7,000.
Yeah. It wasn't. It's considered strategically. It's considered an Allied victory because they took the beaches and they reopened the Western Front. But in terms of
It's about
casualties, then it's a very costly victory. Yeah.
It's more about their areas and their territory.
And it's a very gruesome experience. You had to carry like 10-20 kilograms worth of equipment, and then you had to I think on many occasions I think the on many occasions I think the soldiers had to leave the boats while they were still on like they weren't really at the beaches. They were still like in deep
around
water. Yeah.
So
Well, not
basically
deep
that
water, but
has
it's
to
like it's enough to drown you. With like 20 kilograms of equipment, you had to. Yeah, it's very, very horrible.
And then the Allies mobilized the force quickly.
Yeah, but the Allies did mobilize quickly. It's still very difficult though, because the Germans had the high ground once again. They had these bunkers on, like on the shoreline, and so basically you had to run across this open stretch of a beach, right? And then you were just fully exposed to machine gun fire and everything. Yeah, so it's very.
So the next one is the Allies liberated Paris, right?
Yeah. So basically, D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Hitler on the Western Front, like Stalingrad did for him on the Eastern Front. I suppose you can say that, because basically after D-Day, it's just going backwards, except for like the Battle of the Bulge, but that failed. So okay, now I have to go get my list again. I can't wear my beautiful blanket cloak anymore, because I'm in the pantry.
Okay. Stupid Hitler.
Stupid Hitler. Okay, by that I mean Hitler basically after like not after like throughout the war, Hitler made a lot of tactical errors, made a lot of very very questionable decisions. Many of the times he didn't listen to his commanders and he didn't listen to his generals, and he was overconfident on many
Yeah,
occasions.
like what we talked about the Battle of Stalingrad, right?
Yeah, on the Eastern Front and also on the
That
Western
was like
Front.
the turning point, one of the main turning point.
Yeah. Yeah, so his miscalculations also led to the end of the German the Wehrmacht, and as the war progressed on, he became more and more unhinged. I think like I feel like I feel like he became generally more reckless with his decisions. Like many of his final like orders in Germany, like during like the Battle of like Berlin and stuff. Many of these orders were just like suicidal or for the soldiers involved, and yeah, so as his mental state deteriorated with the war due to many reasons, with stress, he became addicted to drugs. I think he developed Parkinson's, survived an assassination attempt, and all that. Yeah. So as he became
Mentally
more
sick
unstable.
Hitler.
Oh, so are you referring
Mentally
to?
Hitler.
Sorry.
Mentally sick Hitler.
Yeah, mentally ill Hitler. I'm not. I know nothing about I know nothing about psychiatry or psychology. Hitler probably had some illness from the get go. What would he be diagnosed at?
The thing he has like some past trauma about his brother's death when he was like really young too.
I wouldn't say it's just trauma. I'd say it's like a.
No, I didn't mean trauma.
Okay, so Wikipedia, the most reliable website, states that Hitler was a psychopath. He had antisocial personality disorder. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So as he became more and more reckless, the inefficiency of the army also increased. And okay, where was I? Now I have to go get my list again. Okay.
Mention about bombing of Dresden.
Actually, before that, I think Dresden was in early 1945. Yeah, 1945.
It was basically on Valentine's Day, because
Okay, I won't talk about that yet. I won't talk about that yet because there's one important point that I didn't put on the list. I mean, and that's the Battle of the Bulge. Yes, the Battle of the Bulge. What bulge you say? Well, it was basically Hitler's last effort. It was his last-ditch effort at trying to retaliate on the Western Front against against the incoming Allied forces. And so basically in 1944, yeah, in December 1944, he ordered for the Germans to go on the offensive, and he basically repeated what he watch stream. He basically repeated what he did for Battle of the Bulge, and so he basically repeated what he did for in 1940 during the Battle of France. You remember how he pressed through like areas like in northeastern France to try to encircle and surround the incoming Allied forces. Yeah, so he basically tried to do that again here, and it did work for it did work for a while. It's basically Germany's last major offensive, so it did have it was significant, definitely, and it's called the Battle of the Bulge because it made a bulge. If you saw the map there, right, it seemed like the German forces had created like a bulge onto the Allied lines. Yeah, so that's why it's called the Battle of the Bulge.
I think the Nazi could siege the town called Bastogne.
Maybe you can talk about that because I don't know about the specifics.
But they could not occupy that because Hitler just sent the force to another area, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really know about the specifics for that.
So
but
they just left a few troops to siege this town.
very interesting. Although I don't think it would have made a difference. So I feel like even though, what do you think? Do you think you think Hitler had a chance of winning had he won the Battle of the Bulge?
Personally, I don't think.
Possible.
I don't.
But I'm not sure if it would.
So winning the Battle of the Bulge would imply that he would surrender the British and he would surround the British and the French forces like he did early on.
Personally,
Combined with like other.
Let's finish this sentence.
Personally, I think Hitler has lost the war since the operation Seal wasn't successful.
Interesting. But Operation Sea Lion, though, I don't think.
Yeah.
I feel like it's also his fault. No. I also think that he lost. In my opinion, I think he lost the war when he declared war on the United States. Because by the time of Operation Sea Lion failing, the United States had not really like joined the war against Germany. Yet. It was Hitler who actually declared war on the United States after the United States declared war on Japan as a symbol of maybe like solidarity with Japan, because Japan was Germany's ally.
The U.S. I would say the U.S. has a very strong industrial potential. Like they could repair their battleships very quickly.
Yeah, the U.S. has always, even still today, has always been very rich in supplies and stuff like that. Yeah, so
I mean that was the time when the world power changed, right? Because after World War II and probably like World War One, the British Empire was like the main power in the world, but after that the power shifted to the United States. So obviously the United States become more powerful from this war as well. So obviously declaring wars on United States would pretty much spell the end, I guess.
Yeah, I think Hitler declaring war
Because
on
they
the
have
U.S.
nuclear weapons as well.
Yeah, I think Hitler declaring war on the U.S. when the Eastern Front's situation was still precarious I don't think it was a good idea.
The thing is,
See, this is another one of Hitler's mistakes. You see, he declaring war against the United States is probably one of his most serious errors.
personally, I think
I'd
it's
say.
like way before that. Like I think it's when he didn't like fully committed on the British Empire and like go focus on the Soviet Union instead. Because like I think that's basically like create like a distraction that he couldn't like focus on another one. And I think if like he could control the British Empire, like the British Isles first, maybe he could like have like a stronger like territory focus, I guess.
No,
But
yeah,
they
it
didn't
definitely. It basically,
pretty much.
if Hitler had taken, if Hitler took the British outside, then there's basically very little chance. I think that the Americans or the Allies would be able to reopen the Western Front because Britain was crucial before the D-Day landings as the takeoff point for the Allied, for the American, mostly American and British forces.
Yeah.
So if there was no Britain by the time of 1944, then how would the Americans, land in France like successfully?
I think last week we forgot to mention that Germany and the Soviet Union had just signed a peace treaty before the attack of Poland.
We
But-
did talk about that because
But like Hitler just yeeted it out, right?
because obviously Hitler knew that Germany were surrounded, right? I mean, did mention about this, so they kind of like signed treaty with Soviet Union, so Soviet Union can get some sort of like land in Poland, because some area in Poland.
I think
Yeah.
Hitler's main idea for signing the treaty was to prevent a war on two fronts for a while, at least. Hitler did not want to fight a war on two fronts. He signed the treaty to basically delay having to fight the Soviet Union and allies simultaneously, both east and west. East and west. Yeah. So basically, when he took France, he thought that he had. So when he took France, I believe he's more or less confident about the Western Front, which was actually kind of an error because obviously, Britain's survival resulted in the Allies having chances of winning the war against him, and that did happen. Hey, Time, you wanna join the podcast? This Time, Thai Junior here, Commonwealth Secondary School. You can watch this for your chum revision later on, combined humanities revision. Anyway, what was I talking about? On two fronts, yeah. So when Hitler declared war on the Soviet Union in 1941 with Operation Barbarossa, that obviously meant that he was more or less a bit confident, about his prospects on the Western Front. But it could also mean that he was very impatient and therefore very stupid. Okay.
So next one
It
is all
feels a
about.
bit weird. It feels a bit weird to call Hitler stupid. Ever thought about that?
Next
You say-
one is all about Battle of Midway.
No. Let's finish the Western Front first. I think it's a lot more. I think it flows a lot more naturally if we went with the Western Front and then the East. Okay, sorry, no. By Western Front, the Western Front, that's also the Eastern Front. I mean, like the European theater. So let's finish Europe. Yes. So let's finish the. Oh, I clicked out of the list again. Where's my agenda?
Bombing of Dresden.
My man, please write the agenda on the board.
So next
Alright.
is the bombing of Dresden.
Okay, I think we can mention that. So basically, the Battle of the Bulge failed to create like really substantial progress for the Germans enough to the point that they could successfully turn the tide of war against the Allies again. So after the Battle of the Bulge, it was downfall for Germany, and the Allies pushed in on the Soviet Union was also an ally. So let's call them. Let's just say as the Allies pushed in on the Western Front, right? Churchill had this idea to intensify the bombings of German cities, because when you're trying to invade a country, you wanna deplete the supplies, you wanna cause a war of attrition, right? See what Putin. You see what Putin? You see what Putin's doing? How do you say Putin? How do you pronounce Putin? Putin. Guys, help me.
Putin.
Putin. Vladimirovich Putin. Anyway, Putin. See what Putin's doing to Ukraine right now? He's putting important cities under siege, right? That means when you're about to capture a city but you can't, so you have to surround it. You have to cut it off from supplies. You have to bomb it continually and stuff like that. So okay, that's not the best example because these cities weren't under siege.
I think you could
Cities like
compare,
Dresden.
I think you could compare the bombing of Dresden to Germany bombing the British.
Oh
the
yeah,
Britain.
yeah. That's a much better example. Yeah, thank you. So basically, yeah. So it's basically like redoing the Blitz, the Battle of Britain, but against Germany instead. To deplete morale, deplete supplies, cut off rails and stuff like that. But cities like Dresden weren't necessarily under siege during stuff like this, but it's called. It's an aerial bombing program. Yeah, so it's basically like the Blitz. Oh my God.
How was the two different though? I presume that Dresden target on like more like on logistic and supplies compared to like the military stops on like bombing on Britain.
It's debatable, but Dresden is known for being primarily atrocity committed against German civilians though. Because Dresden was a very, very important historical location for Germany. And Churchill ordered the bombing of Dresden, and today it's considered one of the most infamous atrocities committed by the Allies against Germany during World War II. So Dresden, as I mentioned earlier, very important historical city. And in February 1945, it was bombed. Not bombing, I mean just normal bombs, not like normal aerial raids, not like nuclear bombs and stuff. But yeah, so the bombing of Dresden was catastrophic for Germany. Around 25,000 German civilians were killed. 25,000. That's like 25,000. That's almost as bad as like Nagasaki. As in like the direct effects of the bombing itself. So like Nagasaki bombing. The bombing of Nagasaki immediately killed about anywhere between like 39,000 to 80,000 civilians. Yeah, but anyway, Dresden was also pretty bad considering that it was like a normal, it wasn't even a nuke. It was a normal aerial raid. So this really showcases the fact that normal airstrikes will be very devastating against civilian targets. And the bombing of Dresden was you can say that it's strategic. Well, but it also took the civilian population also took a massive toll. So today it remains very controversial, and some people even, you might even call it a war crime. Yeah, some people argue that it's just area bombing against like the innocent civilians. That would make it a war crime. It would be like
It's a war crime. It's a war crime done by the winner. So basically, not a war crime. Anyways, let's move on to the liberation of state camps.
Concentration camps. Yeah. So So as I mentioned earlier, as Nazi Germany expanded, right, one of their main goals was to eliminate Europe of the Jewish population. To achieve this, they built numerous concentration camps and death camps all throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. And so as the Allies pushed in from the Western Front and the Eastern Front, these atrocities were becoming uncovered. And
Can you explain why um they want to eliminate the Jewish, or maybe like specifically Hitler?
well, it's anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism means racism against the Jews, basically. And Hitler was very anti-Semitic, and also used it as a business tactic. He used the Jews as a scapegoat for the German people to blame. After the war, after World War One, I mean, as I mentioned in the previous episodes, the German people were furious over Germany's defeat. So so Hitler blamed the Jews for stuff. He blamed the Jews for Germany losing the war. He blamed the Jews for stealing people's jobs, economic. Basically, he vilified them to he vilified them to the best of his abilities, and this worked for many Germans, not all Germans. It would be wrong to say that everyone in Germany was anti-Semitic, but many Germans were influenced by his anti-Semitic ideals, and you know, so eventually, once Hitler came into power, he started to implement increasingly trying to find the word of the right intensity. Evil policies targeting the Jewish population of Germany and then Europe. It went from something as simple as not being allowed to sit on the bus to losing their citizenship and then full on persecution. Night of the Broken Glass. That's when
It's
the Nazi
it's an
forces.
ultra nationalism or ultra Aryanism.
It's both. Aryanism is Nazi Germany's version of German nationalism. I see.
I think like by using the strategy of scapegoats, I think it's also related to like how the psychology of like anger also like gets people like involved and like gets people to like care about the situation like more than like other emotions. So this strategy.
Hitler appealed to the pathos. Yeah, Hitler appealed to humans' emotions. Hitler appealed to this feeling of vendetta that the Germans had over their loss in World War One. And by using hate speech, Hitler was.
Yeah.
We talk about hate speech, everyone thinks of Hitler, and that's fair. Yeah. By using hate speech, he intensified this sense of hatred for the Jews that the Germans had, and he used it to alienate the Jews and then eliminate them. And the concentration camps weren't. Yeah. So
go back to
Anyways.
that topic.
Okay, yeah. Let's not talk so much about
Manipulation of that camp.
Yeah. So as you know, the Holocaust was not a well-known thing necessarily during World War II. Like everyone knew that Germany was anti-Semitic, but like the true extent of the Holocaust was still unknown to many people, both Allied and Axis. Some even argue that it's a controversial subject, but some historians today argue that some like Wehrmacht soldiers might not have been fully aware of the extent of the Holocaust. So in case people don't know, I think everyone knows. I think everyone knows this, but starting in like 1941, Germany implemented a method of eliminating the Jewish people, exterminating the Jewish people. They would ship. They would carry dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens. No, not dozens, millions. They carry millions of Jewish people, not just Jewish people, by the way. They were Holocaust targeted other people as well, like the gypsies, homosexuals, the disabled and stuff like that. Okay, that's inaccurate. Sorry. I think the Holocaust itself, like by definition, I think the Holocaust itself today, that term refers to elimination of the Jewish people. I think, like as in Holocaust. Yeah. Okay, sorry. So the term Holocaust today refers to the elimination of specifically the Jewish population of Europe. The Nazis also persecuted other ethnic minorities, other groups as well. Yeah, many people weren't aware of how severe Holocaust was, and what the Nazis did was they would ship people. Okay, I said ship again. They would send millions and millions of people on trains to these concentration camps and death camps like Auschwitz, like that's in Poland, or like Dachau, that was in Germany, I think, like Bergen-Belsen, and they would gas them to death. They would, upon arrival, many times they would separate the people into groups. They would filter out those who they deem as okay, so they would filter out those who can still work for them, basically. Those who could still work for them, basically. So if you're like a man in your 20s, you're physically fit, stuff like that, that they get you into the prison barracks, and then they force you to work to death,
They
basically.
are slaves, right?
Yeah, work.
They will be
Slave
slaves.
labor. The conditions in the camp were horrible. Like, it's not surviving the gas chambers basically means that you'll die of disease, starvation.
But it really
Yes.
depends. It really depended on each camp. Like some camps, the victims had to be like shave off their hair.
Not all camps were death camps.
Yeah.
Not all camps were meant to exterminate people, but some were meant to exterminate people. I think like Treblinka or Auschwitz II. I think those were the more famous, like the extermination camps where they would send people there to die. Upon arrival, they just cram you into these gas chambers. They would convince the victim. They would lie to the victims that they were about to take a shower, about to be sanitized, and then they would drop I think cans of hydrogen cyanide. Nitrogen cyanide. What's it? Is it
Cyanide.
Cyanide, but what is it? I'm so bad at chemistry. Oh my god, I can't find it. They used hydrogen cyanide. Correct, hydrogen cyanide. Yeah, they would use hydrogen cyanide to poison and kill these people. The death toll was quite massive. All in all, I think 6 million Jewish people died in the Holocaust. 6 million. It's basically, it's almost unbelievable how large scale it was, and also how relatively recent it was. Just 80 something years ago. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a bit. Okay, so the Allies discovered these concentration camps, and the horror of it all, and also, I forgot to mention the death marches. So basically, as the Allies closed in and they started liberating these concentration camps and rescuing survivors, right? Many of the camps, the guards that would force the prisoners to march towards Germany, you know, because since the German forces were being pushed back to Germany, camps were being liberated. They would move the prisoners. They would transfer the prisoners into a camp, you know, closer to Germany. These would be called death marches. Okay, and they would force the prisoners who were starving and who were very ill to basically march very long distances. And these were also very cruel, just like basically everything else in the Holocaust. And yeah, okay, so I don't think I'll talk a lot more about the Holocaust. To be frank, it's not really necessarily I think it should be the main focus of World War II per se. Anyway, the end of Nazi Germany. Right, finally. So Soviets pushed in from the east. Britain, America pushed in from the west, and they pushed into Germany eventually, and Berlin was surrounded. So the Battle of Berlin was Germany's last stand, and it did not work. Yeah, so fortunately, Berlin fell to the Allies in April.
No, I think it was in
Berlin.
like early
April or
May.
Early May, right? Yeah. Battle of Berlin ended in. Okay, I was saying stuff like April and May, so I wrote Battle of April instead.
I think like the Soviets
Berlin.
also mobilized their force from the east like very quickly also, and they faced like there were some resistances around the city of Berlin.
Yeah, but mostly it's the Soviets. Mostly it's the Soviets who defeated Germany in the Battle of Berlin. It's mostly the Soviet forces. Basically, by the time the Americans got to Berlin, you know, it's basically over already. It's basically the Russians who.
I think like the Nazis just fought to death, right?
Yeah, they were held on to like the very end, and eventually the big guys, the top guys, you know, Hitler shot himself. Joseph Goebbels shot himself. Have I mentioned Goebbels? Minister of Propaganda. I think I did. Yeah, Goebbels shot himself. Hermann Goering and Heinrich Himmler, both of them escaped. Okay, both of these people betrayed Hitler, and so Hitler was basically mad at them by the time he died. Anyway, Goering and Himmler escaped and were eventually arrested. Himmler killed himself. Okay, actually, no, I shouldn't be talking. Be mentioning. Okay, I'll talk about this later during the Nuremberg trials. Okay, so Soviets took Berlin. Hitler killed himself. Nazi Germany fell. So I think officially Nazi Germany
basically
as a state ended.
Those kids like also fought in the siege of Berlin, right?
Sorry?
Those kids like the Hitler youth.
Oh, the Hitler Youth, yeah. So this is once again, you know, as Hitler became more and more reckless, as he became more and more desperate, and by the time of the Battle of Berlin, he was basically sending Boy Scouts to their deaths. Can you imagine? Okay, so the Thai people here would know. You guys have Boy Scouts. Like the Singaporean people watching, you imagine like guys in like the NCC being sent to fight. These people are like 12, 15. They were schoolboys and schoolgirls, and yeah, Hitler sent them to fight on the front lines, and especially like the Battle of Berlin, the Hitler Youth, you know, many children were killed in action, and he also became very became more and more extreme about his policies on like desertion and stuff. Desertion basically means when a soldier stops fighting and tries to run away.
There was also
So
like a Nazi general in the high echelon who negotiated with the Allies that they would get the prime minister position after the war.
after the war,
Yeah,
what's he called? Remember his name?
maybe the one who betrayed him.
You mean like to discuss the I remember. I think it
How
was
Donitz.
Haldernitz. So wasn't Haldernitz? Okay, so he became the head of state. Yeah, so basically he was the leader of Germany after Hitler. But no, he didn't do much. Yeah, he didn't do much. I think all he did was witness Germany surrender, right? Guys like Dönitz and who else was it? Yeah, it's Dönitz. Yeah, Karl Dönitz. Dönitz wasn't really an important figure though. Dönitz was a Kriegsmarine high-ranking officer in the German Marine Force and then in the German Navy. He was a high-ranking official in the German Navy, and he basically became leader of Germany after Hitler died, just to witness it surrender like officially. He didn't really do much. He's known today because of like his autobiography or something. But I wouldn't say he played a big. I wouldn't say he had a big role in the, in the events of the Nazi Germany.
So that really hallmarks the end of the Western Front. When I move on to the Japanese front.
Okay. Yeah. So originally I wanted to talk about the consequences of it on post-war Europe, but I think that would be too much. Okay. Okay. Before we move on, I think we have to talk about resistance forces, though. Yeah. So basically, as Nazi Germany, basically throughout Nazi-occupied Europe, there were resistance movements in many countries. The French resistance was a very notable one, and also in like Russia and stuff. On the Eastern Front, the resistance forces were also quite active there. We must mention like the Warsaw Uprising. Yeah, the Warsaw Uprising in 1944. Yeah, so that's by the Polish resistance, and these resistance forces became more active as the Allies joined them. So many times they would like start actively like fighting in open warfare once the Allies were there to support them. So like the Warsaw Uprising was a notable one because the Soviet Union could have helped them, but they didn't. So they basically stopped outside of Warsaw and let the resistance battle it out with the Nazis, and the Nazis crushed the resistance. So the Warsaw Uprising, why would Hitler condemn? Churchill condemned the Soviet Union, I think, for not aiding the resistance during the Warsaw Uprising.
So basically, the resistance, some of them were well organized and directly controlled by the government.
Yeah, but others weren't as well organized and stuff.
Yeah.
They also didn't have as many weapons. They had to loot weapons and stuff like that. But these resistance forces were very important in providing the Allies with information, espionage, spying, sabotage against the Germans and stuff like that. Yeah.
Speaking of sabotage, so what they did were basically like cutting the telegraph wires.
Yeah, I think telephone wires.
From
I think by then they used telephones already.
yeah.
Yeah, and like
And like
derailing trains, bombing,
rail trains.
blowing up railways and stuff like that. Spying, assassinating officers and stuff. Yeah, very very brave people. Thailand also had the Seri Thai movement. As did Singapore have a resistance movement? Singaporean resistance against the Japanese. I'm sure there was like probably wasn't like as well known as the French resistance and stuff. Anyway, okay. So basically that's it for the Western for the European theater. I don't want to mention about how the Iron Curtain fell and the Cold War
Because that's more
started.
towards
That's a stretch.
work.
If you want to do an episode on the Cold War, then I guess we save that for later. Do we even have time for Japan? Okay, I think we have time for Japan. I think
Okay.
that's not as much to talk about.
So last time we talked about the attack of Pearl Harbor. Japan won that battle, but they didn't deal much damage. Like the U.S. Carrier ships weren't there, so
Yeah, and so there
it
was
wasn't that
some.
successful.
So there was some notable confrontations between the U.S. and and Japan after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. I think we should only mention the most notable one, which was of course Battle of Midway. So the Battle of Midway, I suppose you could say, was the turning point. It's like the Stalingrad of the Pacific.
Oh, Dean, like at that time, like Japan wanted to expand their areas on the Pacific, like to Samoa, to Fiji, or like New Caledonia, and then they attacked the island of Midway.
Yeah. So it's a very important battle, like fought by the Japanese against the U.S. And so the U.S. wanted to defend against the attacking Japanese fleet, and I think what happened. I think the U.S. hit. I think that the U.S. hit their ships away from the Japanese or something. Let me read a bit. Guys, you guys can talk while I read. By the way, it's not just dead silence.
By the way, the Battle of Midway happened during 1942, right? If I remember correctly.
Yes, 1942.
Yes,
6
our
months after Pearl
timeline,
Harbor.
our timeline is a bit off.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry. So we're going back in time because we just finished Europe,
Yeah.
right? So now we're moving on to Japan's defeat, and
So
we're moving back in time a bit.
So after the attack of Pearl Harbor, Japan was quite successful in occupying most of the countries in Southeast Asia.
For
Yeah,
years.
Japan. Basically, on the very same day that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, Japan launched an attack on Southeast Asia. And,
They could
invaded-
occupy like Malaya and Singapore. Like I think they use the military tactics of surprise attack.
Yeah, they were very fast. The Japanese
Like-
were very.
No, we did talk about that last time because they
We already
they
talked a
went
bit about that.
after the entire Southeast Asia for by
You
by
know-
6 months. So that's where
You know, like the using bicycle is also part of surprise attack.
Yeah.
yeah, I think we did talk about that because I had never seen like an attack with bicycle before. Generally, it would be something like
And no,
horse.
it was. I don't
train.
think it was not an attack with bicycle. I think they use bicycle for like transportation and stuff. They wouldn't ride into battle on a bicycle.
I mean, that's technically an attack, though. If you say that's because obviously they would not use the train for an attack, right? Because they obviously use trains for transportation.
Yeah, no. I mean like, I mean yeah. They used it for transportation in like, behind the front line and stuff. But I don't think they rode
And I think
bikes
another
into.
like benefit of bicycle is that they don't require like fuel or energy. Like so, obviously,
Yeah. Also, I forgot to mention
also
one
saves
one. What? Sorry.
it also saves. It also emphasized how like the Japanese were like quite short on resources too. Like at that time, that's like the whole reason why they attacked.
Guess so.
the first
Yeah,
place.
I forgot to mention one of the reasons why Germany lost the war was actually because it relied too heavily on petroleum.
Mhm.
And like as you know,
Mm.
as the Allied
Alrighty.
bombing intensified, as the so the army relied on petroleum to move, and since
Where did they get petroleum from? I mean, the Germany.
they had that, they had the they had the sources. I think they had like a method of using
Was it
artificial fuel or
Russian?
something. Yeah, no, the reason Hitler wanted to take Caucasus was to get the fuel. It
Yeah, because
didn't.
obviously there was not like a lot of energy resources
Yeah,
there in
yeah.
like in Europe, in
Europe.
like Poland. Yeah, because
That's more in on like the eastern side. And so since
and
Hitler,
like
like as the war dragged on, Hitler starved the army of of fuel. That led to its collapse. Anyway, let's of
Move back
Midway.
to
Yeah, so
Midway.
the battle of Midway, the U.S. Now this time the U.S. did a surprise counterattack on against the Japanese, and the U.S. sunk like many. I can't remember like the exact number of ships. Sunk like four Japanese carriers or something. That's quite a lot because carriers are like big ships. Yeah, the Japanese lost 4 fleet carriers and 248 aircrafts destroyed.
Also, Japanese used the strategy of naval aviation.
Oh yeah, so they would fly. The pilots would fly from like aircraft carriers. So that's why sinking the aircraft carriers was a very important blow. Yeah, and the Japanese Navy never recovered from Midway. Midway basically knocked the Japanese Navy out. Yeah.
wow, just for big ships kind of like the entire army. That's
So it's not big. It's just
Devastating
big.
for fleet carriers, 1 heavy cruiser,
Maybe you can show.
248 aircraft. I think like most pilots. I think most like fighter pilots. Yeah, I
but
think basically like
didn't
most
they
fighter
have
pilots
like a
died.
lot of planes?
Yeah, and they had a lot of planes, and most planes were destroyed. Most of their planes were destroyed in Midway. I think that's
I
what.
mean, I mean, I thought they have a lot more planes because of like kamikaze troops and stuff. So I expected them to have a little bit more aircraft.
No, but they didn't always have aircrafts. They were producing aircrafts. So that there wouldn't be like a massive like stockpile of 1 million aircrafts by the time of like 1939. But like they produced the war machine produced weapons, supplies, resources as the war went on. But these like massive blows were the war effort didn't have enough time to produce stuff so that the army could recover in time. Does that make sense? So the Battle of Midway was a very devastating blow on the Japanese. And basically after that, Japan started losing. And this thing called okay, let me go back to my agenda again.
Island hopping.
Island hopping, yeah. So Midway was an island, and so since the Pacific the Pacific Ocean has many small islands scattered around, right? And the Japanese held many of these islands. The US had to go to each island one by one, take the island, and then put everything there, and then go to the next island. Yeah, so it's like kind of like playing a game of, I don't know.
Monopoly.
I forgot how to play Monopoly.
Yeah, Monopoly. I think Monopoly.
Yeah. Anyway, that happened. It's like playing Pac-Man. It's like
Yeah.
playing Pac-Man, but the ghost fights back. Anyway,
But the ghost doesn't just explode around like randomly. The ghosts have like the ghost. Yeah.
The ghost shouts "Banzai" and would do like bayonet attacks. Anyway, okay, I lost my agenda again.
And then they moved to Okinawa, right?
For Okinawa was the last major one. Let's talk about the. Okay, where's my agenda?
I think it's
I want to do an Ajahn. I want to do an Ajahn James impression when I talk. Every time I say agenda, but I've forgotten like stock Ajahn James phrases. Everything except my man. I clicked out of the agenda again.
It's
God,
Iceland
damn
hopping.
it. And there we go. Jesus Christ.
After
Okay, island hopping. So like the important island battles. I think would you consider Philippines island hopping?
What is Iceland hopping again? The jumping from
Island
Iceland
hopping.
to Iceland.
Island hopping. It's when it's like these military engagements on different small like islands in the Pacific Ocean.
What was it with Australian troops as well?
Maybe it's mostly Americans. Maybe Australia or like towards like Southeast Asia, like maybe like Papua New Guinea and stuff like that. Then we also have the British like from like India stuff, so it gets kind of messy.
East Indian Company. You know?
There was combat everywhere, like in the whole of Southeast Asia, like the Allies pushed in from all sides, because Japan, we all know, like because Japan's an island, right? And these occupied territories they were kind of circular in nature, right? So they were kind of like pressed in accordingly. Yeah, so island hopping. So I have a map with me here. It says from Hawaii to Marshall Islands and then Guam, the Battle of Guam.
Guam.
No, I'm not very good about the Pacific theater, and I don't know a lot
Geography.
about, geography. I'm not that accurate. I'm also not accurate about like the specific battles. I know more about the Western Front. So forgive me if unless Bam, you want to say something about like the Battle of Guam? Do you have any details?
Nothing much.
Nothing
It's
much.
It's a typical battle in the Pacific.
Yeah. To be honest, most of these battles weren't as I say the battles in the European theater was actually more like dynamic. Like this very specific, like decisions played a bigger role in determining the outcomes of the battles in the European theater. I think I'd say that like the Pacific theater, it's mostly a case of very fierce resistance, very fierce attacks, and just very bloody battles. Yeah, and okay. I'm not trying to belittle the importance of such battles, but like oh yeah, there it is. Thank you. Yeah, so I basically I'm trying to defend my lack of knowledge. Anyway, Guam's there, Mariana Islands, Battle of Mariana Islands, Philippines as well. Yeah, so Philippines, I suppose you could say it's island hopping because they didn't attack Philippines. Formosa's Taiwan, by the way, in case you guys were wondering. Formosa, as we mentioned earlier, means Taiwan. Okay, so but the more important, the important aspect of island hopping was that as the US got closer to mainland Japan, the Japanese fought harder and harder. The Japanese were very fierce fighters in World War II. They had they had this were indoctrinated with Bushido. Say Bushido was
Ultra-nationalism, yeah.
yeah, it's ultra nationalism, and they had the samurai mindset. So that's Bushido basically. Bushido was the samurai code. Stuff like it's better to die than to surrender. You know, defend the emperor at all costs. Stuff like that, and the soldiers. Really, everyone is kind of crazy. Like all like the commanders, the generals, even like the high-ranking guys. You know, they had this mindset that they you know they couldn't lose no matter what. And so basically, as they became more desperate, they fought more desperately. Kamikaze
Wait.
attacks.
Oh wait, were there any battles in Taiwan or Formosa?
I can't remember. No, because not every part of Japanese occupied. Not all of the territories were actually like by the time Japan surrendered. Not all of the territories were like completely liberated yet, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Japan surrendered. Unlike Germany, Japan surrendered before, you know, like Germany basically surrendered because it had no room left. But Germany was already like, you know, completely overrun. But Japan was being overrun. You know, unlike Germany, where the country itself was already taken. Like, what am I saying? Okay, let me be eloquent about this. So by the time Germany surrendered, most of Germany was already gone. Okay, but Japan, right? Mainland Japan was still intact. There had not been an invasion of mainland Japan, and Japan surrendered because of the. Let's get to that. We'll get to that later. Anyway, so as the Japanese got more desperate, their tactics also got more desperate. So we should talk about kamikaze attacks. So you guys want to say something about that?
So
We did touch
basically,
upon this last time.
it's about.
Okay, go ahead.
So basically, it's about the suicide commission for the country.
Yeah,
I
for
feel like specifically
kamikaze.
so it's like a pilots in like a single pilot in a plane will like use like themselves as like a weapon of destruction, I guess, and like launch themselves and the planes just like bullets into the attack.
And this was very unknown to the US. So they weren't. Never before had they faced an enemy that would kill themselves in action to do stuff like this. And so kamikaze attacks, as silly as they may sound today, were actually quite devastating because of this fearlessness, this ferocity that the Japanese exhibited. Right, they did not fear death. So
Well, was that an exchange of like 1 man to 100 man? 100 men.
Yeah. So whereas the Nazis would maybe like surrender, the Japanese would do stuff like this. They would kill themselves instead of surrendering while still trying to eliminate as many enemy troops as possible. And these kamikaze attacks actually became very very dangerous for the US. And the Japanese also tried other stuff like fake surrendering. Yeah. So anyway, I don't think I have to explain what fake surrendering means, but anyway, kamikaze attacks and stuff. The U.S. eventually took Iwo Jima. That's one of the, like these two islands were Japanese like islands. They were very close to mainland Japan. Am I using word for geography? They are Japanese islands. They are very close to the Japanese mainland, and so fighting became more and more intense. After taking Iwo Jima, the U.S. went to Okinawa. There's recently the Battle of Okinawa, right, where
Like the Japanese dark underground tunnels and hiding
Yeah, they
caves and
hit.
forests with
Yeah,
themselves and
yeah. So they survived like the initial bombings the island, and then they once the U.S. went in, they came out. That's so that's where Andrew Garfield fought in the Battle of Hacksaw Ridge.
Wasn't that for World War I?
Oh, Hacksaw Ridge was Battle of Okinawa. That's World War II. Yeah, so they made it a movie. So there's this guy called Desmond Doss.
and it
was like
was
a
kind
medic.
of guerrilla.
Wait, what do you say, guerrilla?
Yeah.
GUERI. Oh yeah, the Japanese had because a lot of these battles were like Philippines. Like that's in a tropical setting, and foresty areas lead to more guerrilla tactics by nature, I think. And anyway, Okinawa happened. There's a movie called Hacksaw Ridge, which I already mentioned, but I have not actually seen it fully. My dad says it's very gruesome, but don't watch it, good children. Go home and watch Teletubbies and go to sleep drinking cookie and milk. Eating cookie and drinking milk. You cannot drink solid. Anyway, Okinawa was eventually taken. Here, the U.S. allies faced a very big conundrum: to invade or not to invade. It was evident. It was evident that the Japanese would not give up easily. So invading mainland Japan would lead to here we ban Thai language, and I heard เยอะมากเลยอ่ะ
That's fine. He forgot to build his mind like English.
Okay.
Maybe do like the rest of the podcast in Thai.
Nah.
นี่นะครับสหรัฐอเมริกาต้องเลือกว่าจะบุกหรือไม่บุก Kidding. Now, yeah. So invading Japan would lead to heavy casualties for both sides, and U.S. had been bombing Japan like the fire bombing of Tokyo, where like 100,000 people died. I think to date is still the deadliest bombing of all time. It's even like deadlier than the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think like in terms of like the immediate death toll. Anyway, so cities like Tokyo was bombed by like the U.S. as well. The fire bombing was when they use like incendiary bombs to set fire to these civilian targets and just unleash hell. Very horrible for the Japanese civilians. And so the U.S. also had a new toy. That toy happens to be called a nuclear bomb. The U.S. had been. I think we know what the nuclear bomb is like. Thank you very much. Hey, no, these are inaccurate. These are like hydrogen bombs. Look up.
Atomic bomb, like the first version.
Little Boy.
Yeah.
Little Boy and Fat Man. Those were the two bombs used. Yeah. They're showing the bomb, not the blast. Can you see the blast? Like that one in the lower right corner there, you see the mushroom cloud. Yeah, so you know what, it's fine. It's fine. And yeah, so okay, so that was the spoiler alert. The US did bomb Japan. Anyway, so the US decided to use this new weapon, the nuclear bomb. They had tested it earlier, as you know. Okay, so let's go. So Einstein, actually, Mr. Albert Einstein, Mr. Physics is beautiful Albert Einstein, had warned the U.S. of the potential threat that Nazi Germany might pose if Nazi Germany managed to successfully developed a nuclear bomb before the Allies did. So the United States set up, the Manhattan Project to develop a nuclear weapon. And in 1945, this weapon was tested in New Mexico, world's first atomic detonation. Yeah, the Trinity test, and it's functional. And so they had two other fission type
So
bombs.
the US
Nuclear
did
fission.
send nuclear bomb to the country, to its country.
They would send parts, I think. They would send parts, and then that I'm not sure about how they would send. I don't think they send the bombs, the full bombs, because that would be very dangerous. Because then in fact, one of the most, I think I've seen Jaws. Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg. Yeah, so there's this scene where there's this scene where he talks about the USS Indianapolis, right? 400, how many? What did you say again? I want to quote it. I want to do a Quint impression. Quint's a great character. Okay, you remember Quint, yeah. Okay, the people who haven't seen Jaws will be so confused. Anyway, so there's the USS Indianapolis is on a secret mission to deliver the bomb. Maybe parts of the bomb. I don't know. Sorry, I don't know the specific details.
Okay.
Anyway, many of these missions were so secret. In fact, the USS Indianapolis was sunk by a Japanese torpedo. It was so secret that no distress signal had been sent. So the soldiers had to spend days on the water. And there were shark attacks there, so that's where Quint got his shark hunting habit from. Pam, have you seen Jaws? Steven Spielberg's Jaws.
What again?
Jaws. Have you seen Jaws by Steven Spielberg?
Yes.
Jaws was like the
Jaws,
shark.
yeah. We were talking about the US. I don't think I have to look up Jaws. Anyway, we're talking about the USS Indianapolis. I think Poom talked about how the bombs were delivered. Yeah, so the USS Indianapolis was a ship that carried parts of the bomb, I think. Hiroshima bomb. That's what Quinn said. Gotta thank that scene. It's my favorite scene from the Jaws movie, where they talk about scars and stuff. Anyway, let's not get too off tangent here. So the US decided that they would bomb Japan.
Nagasaki is a port city to the south of Japan in the island of Kyushu. Yeah.
My junior is making some. What's that? Spaghetti? Salami. He's making salami sandwiches. Smell so good.
Here's Nagasaki.
Nagasaki. Wait, was Nagasaki the first target?
Yes.
Wasn't Nagasaki?
The little boy. The little boy one.
Nagasaki was the fat man one, but wasn't Nagasaki like the secondary target?
Oh, I am mistaken.
Let me see.
Hiroshima.
They were actually gonna bomb Kokura. Actually gonna bomb Kokura instead of. What? You're laughing. This is nothing to laugh at. This is.
No, I'm laughing at like.
Oh, I don't know where Kokura is. Do you know? I don't think it matters.
Kokura is.
So basically they didn't intend to bomb Nagasaki. Okay, maybe we should say why. Maybe I should say why they wanted to bomb Japan first.
Kokura is here between the city of Kukume and Fukuoka.
Okay. So firstly, they wanted to bomb Japan because, as I mentioned earlier, they did not want to risk losing massive amounts of. They did not want to lose massive amounts of. Oh wait, you can't say you lose casualties. They did not want to suffer from massive numbers of casualties that would result from a Japanese an invasion of the Japanese mainland. So they wanted to yeah.
I would like to add that from this part, some historians have pointed out that like the fact that they will bomb they will nuke Japan is was because they don't want the Soviet
Union to take part of Japan, right? Yeah,
right.
yeah. So like Korea, for example, when World War II ended, the Soviet Union was in North Korea, and America was in South Korea, and so that's where the whole thing started. And so the Soviet Union was preparing to attack Japan. So I suppose historians argue that the US did not want the Soviet Union to take over Japan. So they wanted to quickly and swiftly beat Japan first. Because by that point in time, the Soviet Union did not have a nuclear weapon yet. So the US wanted to. Yeah. So I suppose part of the incentive for the US to deploy the nuclear bomb was also that they wanted to perhaps create this show of maybe military strength against the Soviet Union, because after all the US never really got along very well with with the Soviet Union, communism and stuff.
So this one is the city that was the first victim of the nuclear bomb, Hiroshima.
Yeah, so the little boy bomb was Hiroshima on 6th of August 1945.
It was like a memorial place.
Yeah.
The atomic.
So many people died. It's crazy. Basically, 100,000 people died in a split of a second, and yeah, even the bombers. I think even the bomber pilots were shocked by how devastating the bombing was. But yeah, Hiroshima was bombed. Japan still refused to surrender. Actually, no. When did the US deliver an ultimatum? Was it after Hiroshima? 7 to 9 August. After the Hiroshima bombing, Truman issued a statement announcing the use of the new weapon. And Truman warned Japan, if they do not now accept our terms, they may expect a rain of ruin from the air, the like of which has never been seen on this earth. Yeah. So basically, after the bombing of Hiroshima, Truman threatened to use the bomb again on Japan. Japan still refused to surrender, and 3 days later, the second bomb dropped on Nagasaki, and Japan surrendered. Okay. So Japan actually surrendered. When did Japan surrender officially? The bombing of Nagasaki was on August 9th, 1945. And Japan surrendered on August 15th. Japan surrendered on August 15th, and today we say the war officially ended on September 2nd. September the 2nd.
Then the American involvement in Japan economic recovery.
Yeah, so after the war, after the bombings, actually, America did not want Japan to fall to communism, like North Korea, like Vietnam, because Japan was, first of all, Japan was an important. Japan had an important strategic location, I think, and also America did not want to waste bomb, did not want to waste all the stuff they did to defeat Japan in World War II, just to let the Soviet Union take over. So the US made sure to help Japan recover economically after the war, and
I would say
anime.
I would say general Douglas MacArthur, he understood Japanese culture very well.
Oh yeah. Douglas MacArthur was a major player in the Pacific
He
Theater.
didn't
yeah.
make like the emperor become the war criminal.
Yeah, so the defeat of Japan in World War II was actually a quite an event for the Japanese people because they were raised to believe that the emperor was immortal. Yeah, and so Japan losing the war. Actually, no, it was actually the emperor's decision. The emperor was called Hirohito, by the way. No, after the bombing of Nagasaki, the generals, many of them still did. Many of them still did not want to surrender, but eventually they went to the emperor. The emperor gave the approval to surrender. The emperor did not want to. He said he did not want the Japanese people to suffer, so he ended the war. And he said the war has not necessarily grown to Japan's advantage or whatever it is. I forgot. Anyway, yeah. So it's quite an event for the Japanese. It's quite yeah. So you were raised thinking that your emperor is a god, and then he loses to some Americans. But the emperor was actually allowed to remain in power. Yeah, Hirohito actually remained in power. The royal family still lives on even today. Why that one? No. Here we are against biased representations of historical figures. I absolutely demand and implore that you show an appropriate picture of Hirohito.
Don't worry. I'll take out the later, I guess.
Okay, yeah, that's better.
WWII gel.
Yep. Okay, yeah. So basically that's the emperor of Japan. Wasn't actually the main the main guy in charge. Actually, the guy in charge was actually a guy called Hideki Tojo. And he got killed. He got executed after the war. Anyway, a lot of so after Japan surrendered, a lot of generals committed suicide. Bushido samurai thing, seppuku. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah, that's what
And here is an expert on Japanese culture. Maybe he should show. Yeah, seppuku. I think some of them still did seppuku, right? Yeah, so seppuku is when you stab her. You stab disembowel yourself. Don't look it up. Forgot. Don't. No. Get it out. Ew. Get it out. Get it out. Yeah. Anyway,
like watching
a lot of the generals committed suicide rather than surrender. Tojo didn't, so Tojo got hanged. Yeah. So the war officially ended on September 2nd. Actually, what's the event that actually it's actually considered like the official end of World War II? Okay, so Japan surrendered on August 15th, 1945, and officially signed the surrender documents on September 2nd. Yeah. So yeah, that's it. World War II. Have a good night. Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, I forgot. Let's talk about the bad guys. The bad guys. Okay, I will refrain from being subjective. Actually, no, I will not refrain. I will not refrain. I will not refrain from being subjective. Nazis were evil.
What about Mussolini?
Mussolini lost power in 1943, 2 years before Hitler died. Italy, I didn't mention Italy at all. That's for a reason.
Italy really defeats in Africa.
Italy didn't do crap. Italy did
and
not
like
do crap.
Hitler had to send troops to help them.
Yeah, Hitler had to send troops to help Italy out, and Mussolini, I think, lost power in 1943. Eventually, he got executed in 1944.
1945. 45.
45. So he got shot, and then they hung his body up upside down for the world to see. You can find a picture of that, but don't, because then I think we'd get demonetized. And then, okay, so let's go to Germany. Hitler killed himself in his bunker. Joseph Goebbels, minister of propaganda, killed himself. And now the other big guys, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, killed himself once he got arrested. Hermann Goering, second in basically Hitler's number 2. Luftwaffe killed himself just before he was about to get executed after the Nuremberg trials. So the Nuremberg trials were a series of trials for the Nazi war criminals. Yeah, so those who were left after the war were brought to trial in Nuremberg, and many of them were hanged. Guys like Karl Dönitz and Heinz Guderian survived. Write some very famous autobiographies. Some people escaped, like totally. Others escaped for a while and got caught later, like Adolf Eichmann, who played a big role in the Holocaust, escaped for like almost 20 years. He was free for almost 20 years until he got arrested and then hanged in like the 60s. In Japan, a lot of generals committed suicide, although like guys like Chojo did not. Chojo was executed later on. And World War II was and is still the deadliest war in human history. World War II led to a very big shift in the power dynamic in most of the world. Actually, maybe Paul wants to say something about the power dynamic, because I think he's been itching to say it for a long time.
I mean, there's really not a lot of things to say, I guess, but obviously there was a shift in powers, not similarly to how like the British Empire was to power, but obviously after the British Empire exerted its resources in terms of soldiers, in terms of like natural gases and like weapons and stuff, they kind of like falling down after World War II. Obviously everyone hurts, but I'm not sure about this, but the US obviously kind of didn't hurt much as other countries, because obviously it only like really engaged to like Japanese and maybe a little bit on like the Western front. And obviously after that the US became more powerful, because as we said earlier, because of like its strong economic and something. So it's kind of like
Industrialization.
Yeah.
Yes.
Something like that.
So,
I have a lot of information.
so for Soviet Union, they began to spread communism to countries in Asia and Eastern Europe. They signed Warsaw Pact, consisting of countries like Poland, Yugoslavia.
Oh yeah. Well, you guys have to. I just came back.
We talk
So-
about the Warsaw Pact. It was signed between Soviet Union and countries in the Balkans, like I would say Romania, Yugoslavia, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And also
After the war-
Poland, and also Czechoslovakia and Poland.
No, have you mentioned how there's the divide between the East and the West? Yeah. Yeah. So after the war, as you remember correctly, they met in like Germany. The Soviet Union and the Americans met in like Germany. So basically, after the war, a the Soviet Union had control of the Eastern Europe, set up communist satellite states. America had influence over Western Europe, and ideological differences, economic differences, and stuff like that eventually led to the Iron Curtain being
So
formed.
this is basically the map of Germany after World War II.
Yeah.
You can this one is controlled by British, this one is France, and this one is the US. And around Berlin is Soviet, but the Berlin, an important city and its capital, was divided again into many countries.
Yeah.
And I guess eventually the UK and France just left, and the land was given to the US, the whole.
Yeah. Anyway, after the war made the US and the USSR super powerful.
Yeah,
So
I
this
would like to add to my point a bit. So basically, the US had a perfect opportunity to rise into power. Obviously, the war was kind of weakened at that point, and obviously the US. I'm not sure, but would you say that the US had the strongest militarily after the World War II ended? Maybe
I say so.
just
I'd say
after.
so. I'd say so.
Yeah, but right now,
Anyway,
definitely US has the strongest military. So obviously, this helped them rise into power, as well as the inventiveness and technological development as well. So basically, this made
which led to Cold War. Yeah.
the Cold War.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the Cold War because it's 40 years. Anyway,
yeah. So
let's call it.
basically,
anything else to add?
Basically, there were wars like Korean War and Vietnam War.
Yeah, those are proxy wars.
You talk about that.
Yeah. So
To stop the spread of communism and promote democracy, kind of that.
Democracy. Yeah. So Cold War, direct result of World War II, direct result of World War One, direct result of Franz Ferdinand dying, direct result of that guy turning his car down the wrong street. Yeah. So in case you guys, I didn't mention this last time, but the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, who died, whose death caused World War One, he survived an assassination attempt earlier that day. And he got killed when his driver took a wrong turn and ran into one of the other assassins. Anyway, let's not get butterfly effect involved here and
let's
call it.
Let's not waste our time and let's come to the conclusion. Okay, so we can say that the World War II had its atrocities on people's life and economy all over the world. Moreover, it eventually affected many countries' foreign policies to choose between communism and democracy, And some even had to take part in the protracted Cold War that caused another million casualties. Therefore, the World War II is one of the bloodiest lessons of our humankind that should be inscribed and scrupulously studied to prevent the history from repeating itself. Anything to add?
That's pretty much it.
God bless the UN.
Joining today.
All right. Come on, host. You don't want to do some sort of conclusion?
Yeah, I think we don't want to talk about the aftermath of World War II much because
not the aftermath, like some sort of wrap up the whole.
Yeah. I know. I'm just clarifying.
So currently, the only functions the host do is just hello, welcome to the podcast, and then all right, thank you, goodbye.
No, I'm just clarifying why we're not talking about the aftermath of World War II as much as World War One, because it pretty much ties to the Cold War, and it directly led to the Cold War, and so we wanted to separate it to another episode because
also I forgot. Also, I forgot to mention, 80 million people died in World War II.
That's a lot of casualties.
That's many casualties, civilians as well.
How many percent of the world population it was?
Yeah, because there were not a lot of people back then,
Many
because
percent
obviously the fertility rate
world
has been like massively increased during the past
3.7%.
decades.
Okay, boomer.
3.7% of the world population died in World War II. However, Jewish population in Holocaust. Okay. Oh my God. Okay, hang on. Let me find the statistics. I can't find it. I wanted to find what's the percentage of Jewish people died.
Finding Inks, what's your take on this?
Oh, okay. So from a conclusion, I think World War II demonstrates a lot of like human evil and demonstrates the world to show like everyone about how human can really be gruesome sometimes. Human can really be like malicious a lot of the times.
Yes.
It's not like this is the first time or anything, but this is the most well-known time in histories of human, I guess. And it also demonstrates like, such as we mentioned, the Holocaust, the gruesome war, and the condition that these soldiers were put it in by the commanders. The world is not like a beautiful place.
Okay, I found it. Sorry, please go on.
Yeah,
please go on.
Okay, the world is not like really like a beautiful place as like many thought of. So I think it shows like how people, like the general public, view the world a lot, and like how people like develop and follow mentality of others a lot too. So yeah, that's it.
I found it. Yeah, a third of the world Jewish population died, and 2/3 of the European Jewish population died during the Holocaust.
Right, so I'll be the one to end this, I guess. So for me, my take for World War II is that obviously 1 second. So obviously, as I said earlier, there's a book called like Change of the World Order by Ray Doyle. So it's basically kind of says how like during our lifetime there will be during our lifetime there will be changes in like
Whom has an assistant.
no my father is a bit like noisy, so I'm trying to make him stop. So basically during our lifetime there's a conflict that will happen, but we will never seen them before, like for example COVID-19. Obviously no one expected this to happen, but obviously there's some pattern like the fall of economic and something like that. So I think, as you guys may know, we kind of see some sort of patterns that may happen in the current situation that can be compared to World War II, I guess, but not directly. So we should learn from it, because obviously we don't want it to happen again, something like this. My conclusion was kind of rough, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah. Very insightful reflections. Anyway, I think that's it for World War II. Then 2 episodes.
Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Lee, for joining us this time again. Bye.
Bye.